Testing 1, 2, 3, guys. Let me know if you can hear me loud and clear. I've been going back and forth with the title, and I may end up changing the title again. I don't know. I don't know. Let me see my lipstick. My napkin. Let's see. Sorry for the delay. I was a little behind. Testing. Can you guys hear me? Yeah, that looks fine. Thank you, Regina. So, here's the thing. I don't like starting late at all. I really don't. I like to be on time. If I'm going somewhere, if I have an appointment doing this show, I like to be on time because it's a show where I plan out different topics, and I count certain amount of time to spend on each topic. We have a guest coming on tonight. The judge isn't here. He's running late, and I don't like that because it throws everything off. But here's the thing. It's 9:15. The guest, Dr. Carmen Johnson. I can't wait for you guys to hear her story. She is coming up at 9:30. And there's a couple things I want to talk about. And you know what? I wanted to talk about with the judge. I'll talk about it by my damn self. However, if he's not here by 9:30, I'm ending the show because it doesn't make sense for me to continue to drag on a show when someone cannot be on time. It's beyond l- being a pet peeve. I just think if you cannot be on time as an individual, something is wrong with you. And this is why, like, even with me, if I don't start the show on time, it just throws it all off. But I am here. Things do happen. And I really want to have you guys hear Dr. Carmen Johnson's story. Honey, the bayou, she has a very extensive bayou. Thank you, Sam, Regina. Hello to everybody on X, guys. Please like, and share this video. Share this live stream on your social media outlets. Share. So the title says Wisconsin Supreme Court. I think I'm gonna end up changing it to my original. I do that. Wisconsin Supreme Court breaking spending records, right? All because of Elon. I don't think I like that title. I think I'm gonna go with my original, and this is what I don't like about myself, right? I don't like to be late. I like to be on time, but um I'm indecisive. I don't like that about myself. Chaos, fallout, sparks, Democrat, people. Yeah, I might just end up changing the damn title. Cause it's the title is actually bothering me now. It's really bothering me. And of course, I come up. All right. No wonder. I know what I did wrong there. Now I know where it went. Oh my God. Okay, so I changed it in the wrong direction. Give me a minute. Just give me a second. Give me a sec. Um Okay, I have the tags. Give me a minute, guys. This is my mistake here because I updated on the software, and I need to just update it on YouTube. So and it kind of it reset everything. So it's kind of just throwing me off here. Just give me a minute. Little tech, not even technical, just a little bit of housekeeping. All right, this is better. Okay. All right. Okay. Uh, where I'm not bringing him on with this. All right. Let me change this. And this is why I have to start on time because everything else would just get thrown off. I would get thrown off of everything. All right. Got it. So, GOP headquarters in New Mexico had a firebomb. Trump is talking about a third term. We have a guest, Dr. Carmen Johnson's coming up. She should be up in 9 minutes. I do want to talk about the Wisconsin Supreme Court. That's going to be later in the show. And that's kind of like the main meat of the topic because apparently Wisconsin election is tomorrow on Tuesday, and that is for one of the election for the Supreme Court judges. One is a conservative, one is a liberal. And Elon Musk, honey, and other wealthy people, this is like they broke records with spending money. So that election is tomorrow, and that's a big election tomorrow, the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Tesla still being vandalized. And definitely want to mention the SAVE Act. So this week in Congress, they are going to be voting on the SAVE Act. And the SAVE Act has to do with making sure, and this is a bill presented by the Republicans, making sure that only American citizens can vote. And I support that. And of course, the Democrats do not. So we have this battle between the GOP and the Democrats, right? And this battle is going to continue on forever, but particularly under the Trump administration, anything the Republicans in Congress roll out, we already know that Democrats are going to say no. No matter if it's good, if it's bad, if it's bipartisan, the Democrats are always going to say no. That's their MO. They have nothing else to stand on. They refuse to take accountability for the reasons why they lost the election, which is, i.e., the open border. And you don't want to save face by supporting the SAVE Act. And Trump is threatening Iran to bring tariffs down on them. But remember, this week, not tomorrow, April the 1st, but April the 2nd, the tariff starts with Canada. I believe Mexico too. So that's this week. So I want to touch on that. And the truth about Hitler. I saw a clip from the show Redacted. I like that show Redacted. And, they've come across some legitimate documentations about Hitler. And I kind of I've heard this narrative before, and they kind of just confirmed it. And I believe it. So we'll talk about that later. All right. So I think the judge is situated. I'll bring him on when I see him on the camera there. So we won't have time to go over the couple of things that I wanted to because 24 minutes that went by. That could have been dialogue. All right, you ready?
Yeah.
So Dr. Carmen Johnson, she's coming up in 5 minutes. So Trump's third term. Give me a second here. Okay, let me see this. Nope. Term. That's the third term. Now let me pause this and share.
considering. You said you were not joking about a third term, about possibly wanting a third term. Does that mean you're not planning to leave office on January?
I'm not looking at that, but I'll tell you, I have had more people ask me to have a third term, which is in a way it's fourth term because the other election, the 2020 election was totally rigged. So it's sort of a fourth term in a certain way. I just don't want the credit for the second because Biden was so bad. He did such a bad job. And I think that's one of the reasons that I'm popular, if you wonder the truth. I think I'm popular because we've done a great job. I think we've had the best almost 100 days of any president. And most people are saying that. And it's an honor. We're bringing back our country. We're respected as a country again. And we're strongly respected. And people are amazed. I was with some very important people today, and they said that they've never seen a turnaround of a country as fast as this. Even look at our border. We have nobody coming in. And you can come into our country, but you have to come in legally. But we have nobody coming in to our country. It's almost shut down. They've never seen anything like it.
The Constitution limits a president to 2 terms. Is it your understanding that they have to
I don't
be?
even want to talk about it. I'm just telling you, I have had more people say, please run again. They said, we have a long way to go before we even think about that. But I've had a lot of people. Yeah, go ahead. Did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, do you think that's an appropriate precedent to set, even if it wasn't you in this position, to see a president serve a 3rd term?
I don't want to talk about a 3rd term now because no matter how you look at it, we got a long time to go. We have a long time. We have almost 4 years to go. And that's a long time. But despite that, so many people are saying, you've got to run again. They love the job we're doing. Most importantly, they love the job we're doing.
So 3rd term, but you have the 22nd Amendment. But maybe there's a loophole. I don't think so. He's not going to run for a 3rd term, but that's on the gossiping media train. What are your thoughts?
The last amendment was designed to prevent another Franklin Roosevelt. It's unclear to some as to whether or not it just means no more than 2 consecutive terms, or if you have no more than 2 consecutive terms, what happens when you get a delay? It's kind of a novel situation. I don't think it's the strongest position, but it's a talking point. So let's see what happens with it. The Republicans are actually responsible for that. And the interesting thing is their reaction to Franklin Roosevelt kind of cut them off because they probably could have gotten a 3rd term with Eisenhower. But they didn't. So they got that introduced when Truman was in office, and the amendment passed. So there we go.
The last
Roosevelt got elected to 4 consecutive terms.
And that's when the 22nd Amendment was revised after him.
Well, yeah, after that, Truman was in office. But like I said, the interesting thing is had they not passed that, they probably could have kept Eisenhower in for a 3rd or maybe 4th term. He was a popular president. He was no nonsense. He had common sense. He was well briefed on the subject. He was once known as the smartest man in the U.S. Army, and he showed it. He was the commanding general of the largest invasion force in human history, and at the end of World War II, commanded more troops than any other general in world history. He had 12 million Americans and Brits and Frenchmen and such like under his command at the end of World War II. 12 million. That's a whole lot. Mm-hmm. So he also commanded NATO forces, was chief of staff for the Army, so he could have gotten anything he wanted. He was probably one of the most popular presidents going, but he played a lot of golf. A lot of golf. And his mistress during World War II, in fact, his mistress for the rest of his life, wrote memoirs talking about that. He didn't deny it. But then his wife couldn't say anything because there was a notorious affair that she had had with some of his subordinate officers when he had been assigned to the Panama Canal before World War II. So she was a little bit of a neurotic somebody, but it was what it was. So now we have this.
It says the second way to be president is to be chosen president by the House of Representatives in those unusual situations where no candidate for president obtains a majority of the electoral college. The 12th Amendment, carefully tracking and rewriting the language of Article 2, Section 1, refers to the House right to choose the president 3 times, and in a fourth reference speaks of when the right of choice shall devolve upon them.
Yeah, that's primary constitution. They have that. But anyway, it is what it is. So I think it's more of a talking point than anything else. And by the time he gets through, he will be one of the 3 oldest presidents the U.S. has had. That'd be Biden, Reagan, and then him.
Can you sit up?
I am sitting up. I'm in a different chair.
Oh, why did you change chairs?
Because this one is a new chair. Let me.
Let's go back to Carmen. I'm about to bring her up. Okay, here we go. Hi.
Hi, how y'all doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I thought it was going to be Zooms and I was going to have my background and all of that, but I'm here. I made it. Hey, Judge, how are you?
Hi, Doc.
I don't know if you could do, I think you could do the green background with this. I'm not sure. I never tried it.
It's okay. We won't do this.
So you emailed me your bio, and then when I glanced at it, I was like, "Oh wow!" I'm gonna introduce some of the bio, but you could definitely, speak to your activities. I think better than me, but welcome, Dr. Carmen Johnson. I'm glad you're here. I do know of you. You've been on Judge O'Brown's show a few times, and so I kind of followed your story. So, but I wanted to introduce you to my audience, Dr. Carmen Johnson. And how about you introduce yourself? Actually, let me just read this because you hold a PhD in philosophy, a scholar in metaphysics, the science of the mind, and mental science. You also hold a certification as a paralegal, having undertaken extensive studies in the criminal justice domain. And you are currently pursuing certifications as an American with Disabilities legal advocate. Unwavering in the face of past injustices. You served on numerous boards and committees, including a Council of Court Excellence, American Bar Association, National Bar Association, the United Nations, and you sat on Congressional Advisory Board for Congressman Glenn Ivey, and you focus on reentry. So, welcome. And how about you just formally introduce yourself?
I mean, you pretty much said it. I think you missed the part that I'm a lobbyist and I write legislation, and my main focus nowadays is justice reform. That's not what I started out in life as interested in doing, but here we are today. So that's the focus in my life now.
So being a lobbyist, can you elaborate a little bit and explain to the audience exactly what a lobbyist does? What do you do?
So what I do with my nonprofit, because I'm a lobbyist registered under Helping Ourselves to Transform, my interns and I, we write sound draft legislation, and we go find sponsors, state senators, state delegates, in order to sponsor our bill, in order to get our legislation passed.
Any recent legislation you have on the?
Yeah, we're getting ready to get a piece of legislation signed into law, and it's called Maryland Fair Taxation for Justice Involved Individuals. And basically it deals with people that are impacted by the justice system, and when they come home, they owe taxes, and they have interest and penalties and fees, and they was audited without them knowing it, and things of that nature. So this piece of legislation, it really sings to professionals and even elected officials and business owners and stuff like that have financial issues when they come home, like, regular people that find themselves behind the wall. They don't, a lot of them don't have to deal with that type of stuff, but professionals, they find people that have worked in corporate America and find themselves behind a wall, they have to deal with taxes and stuff like that. And everyone has said, Dr. Johnson, I never heard of that. I said, well, I mean, my interns and I, we think out the box, and we're trying to help everyone that is exposed to the system. And last year we had the in custody death, and that was for the state of Maryland. That was signed into law last year, and then we are already getting started on our new draft piece of legislation for 2026.
That's great. So, would you mind telling us your unique story? The situation that you had found yourself in, and where you're at now.
Well, the judge always liked to cut me off because I guess I don't be telling it right. But at the end of the day, I'm the former housing chair for the state conference NAACP, and I was lawfared back in 2011, and it went all the way through up to actually now, to be exact. And at that particular time, back then, that's when all the foreclosures was happening all around the country, all around the world. And because I was the housing chair for the state conference NAACP of Maryland, I was all over the news, trying to get a moratorium to freeze the foreclosures, because everyone knows that people of color, they say that brother, that man, he doesn't want to marry the woman of color. Well, these were families. These were mothers, fathers, children. And for me, it was just too heart-wrenching. It was like, I had to do something about it, which was try to get the moratorium to freeze the foreclosures in the state of Maryland. Fortunately, I did get the moratorium. However, I did not get the photo op, because by that time I was, on my way to trial, and ultimately arrested at trial and sent off to jail. It was a horrific moment in my life, a horrific time in my life. When I believed in our government, I believed in everything that they stood for. And I never had a reason to think about crime or jail or prison or police or or anything like that. Like you just don't think about stuff like that until it's too late. And it was too late, because by the time that happened to me, my family didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do, and it was just an absolute disaster. Not to mention, even though I heard the story of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King and Assata Shakur and Professor Angela Davis, like I heard all of those stories. But, in the back of my mind, did it really happen, or did it really not happen? Even though I believed them per se, but I wasn't there until that shit happened to me. And I was like, oh my God, this is real. This is what they do to Americans. This is what they do to innocent people. And it's really unfortunate. And for years, I thought that I was the only one. And then when I came home, after spending 3 years at a prison camp, I realized that this was the norm. this was happening more than what I thought. I just never heard of it because I didn't care. It wasn't my problem. And but now it's my problem. It's my problem every single day. It's my problem. I see it in my community, and I do something about it. And so um, what I can say is I don't want to go through that again, nor do I want to see any innocent person uh, put in jail. I don't think that that's fair. I don't think it's right. And if you can beat me, why do you have to cheat me?
I like that slogan. Yeah. And I love that saying. It makes sense. And it's true because, so listen, given your background, when you talk about lobbying, getting laws passed, you really are fighting for, number one, the American people and, people in your community, which just so happen to be Black Americans. Um, and I think a lot of your policies will help marginalized groups as well. Um, just speak to the importance of public policies because I think when we talk about Americans, we get so wrapped up in the headlines and social media and national news or national elections to where we forget about what's going on in our backyard, where we live at on a local level. So speak to the importance of public policies locally and how that really affects our everyday lives.
Well, what makes Maryland unique, and I can't speak about any other state in the country, but what makes Maryland unique is the fact that it's right beside Washington, D.C. And everything happens in Washington, D.C. in terms of policy and things of that nature. And then what our elected officials, our state elected officials, our county elected officials, our mayors and things like that, most of us regular people, we have their cell phone numbers. We can go and knock on their doors, and we know, we can walk up in their office and stuff like that. And everyone's been knowing everyone for years and years and years. And so is when you have that close knit like that, it's no excuse for regular people to not take advantage of knowing who their elected officials are, because the doors are open here in Maryland for you to walk up in there anytime, or to call them, or go to a town hall and see them and ask them questions and things of that nature. But it's very important for our community to be more involved with what's happening in public policy, in civic engagement, in social engagement, because there's so much that our people that look like us are being affected. And so we don't have the luxury anymore. I mean, years ago, we didn't have the luxury to just go hang out at a restaurant or go hang out at the club or anything like that. We don't have that luxury anymore. The way that they are killing our youth, the way that they are gunning us down, the way that they are doing these things, the way that they are arresting people so easily, we don't have the luxury. We need to know who our elected officials are right in our backyards. We also need to know what the law is. We need to know what are the laws in our state. We need to know what the state laws are, what the federal laws are, just in case. And even here in Maryland, I think it was a piece of legislation. I don't think I know. It was a piece of legislation that was passed last year, signed into law by the governor. And we protest about it, but of course it was signed into law, where it will allow 10 to 13-year-olds to be arrested. And so, it just horrified me, because I was thinking, God, when I was 10 years old, I didn't have a thing on my mind. I didn't know what was going on. I had no idea. And our children don't have the luxury of that anymore. And so we have to know who our elected officials are. We have to, be at these rallies. We have to be going door to door when legislation sessions start January, all the way until April. We have to, know what legislators are voting for a piece of legislation and which ones are not. We have to know all of these people, because we're in dangerous times, and our children don't have the right anymore to be children. And it's really unfortunate.
Right, because a lot of people think that, well, I feel as though a lot of people believe, because I see it by their actions, if they are part of the Democrat Party or even Republican Party. It doesn't matter. I'll just leave it up. I'll just leave it up to the people who I elected into whatever office, whether it's a judge, sheriff, or a congressperson, or mayor, or governor, or even presidency. But I think what people need to understand is no, whoever you elect into office, no matter what party affiliation, you have to stay on top of them and monitor, okay, what are you doing? This is the agenda that we need for this community. What plans do you have? Like, we really have to stay on top of these elected officials. Would you agree?
I agree, but I got sidetracked because I'm looking at TLC Carol. He says, "Don't break the law; you will never go to jail." Trust me, I didn't break a law, statute, or code, and it's a lot of people that are out here that have not broken any statutes or codes or laws, and they find themselves behind the wall. And I remember once upon a time when I used to think just like you, and sir.
By the way,
Yes, sir.
I want to get into your book.
So that you're right, but I
We'll
just,
get into the book. That'll cover what you just got asked about not breaking the law. Don't do the crime if you can't do the time. That wasn't what happened with you.
nope.
No, it wasn't what happened with her. But I always, maybe I should have mentioned this to you ahead of time. Don't really read the comments.
Okay. I mean, because I'm getting
that's people's. What's that? The First Amendment, First Amendment right? That's the freedom of whatever. And then the comments doesn't stay up. So yeah. But anyway, okay. You want to get into her book?
Yeah, that addresses the question that just came up on the comments. This book, it's called The Pretense of Justice, and I wrote the foreword for it. It's a very interesting book. I read the transcript of the trial proceedings. I was rather astonished at what I read because at first I just took this as another somebody lamenting the fact that they got caught. But that's not what happened with you. Now, what's going on is you were one of the early targets of what we now call lawfare. In other words, using the criminal justice system to accomplish economic, political, or social purposes rather than dealing with control of crime. Something that I really seldom ran into in my career was that the people that were the primary targets of the trial, they gave evidence that said you had absolutely nothing to do with this whole thing. They didn't even know you. But what seems to have happened, to give a little timeline for this, is in California, there was a bank called One West Bank. There was a young woman who was aspiring to a political career, and she was running for a district attorney's office. There was a gentleman, and I'm being polite about this, who was heavily invested in the banking and mortgage industry. And he came up with a bank known as One West Bank. His CEO for that bank, his name was Mnuchin. He was with the Obama administration and spent 1 year with the Trump administration. The person that was behind this bank financed a number of district attorneys in terms of their elections all around the country, including where you were back in Maryland. And this particular youthful young woman who was running for district attorney of San Francisco turns out to be Kamala Harris. The person that was assisting her and financing her was George Soros. Well, George Soros on the West Coast got in a little bit of a mess with his investments because his bank and his CEO were subject to, I think, 5,200 plus counts of indictment in just about every county in California. Well, his girl wound up being sponsored through a lot of money being channeled in her direction, and she became Attorney General for the state of California. She consolidated all of his cases and dismissed them. and he sold his bank for $3.6 billion a few weeks after all these indictments were dismissed. And Mnuchin went on to his administrative career in politics for at least a couple of presidents. Now, meanwhile, back where you were, it seems that the governor of Maryland at the time had heavily invested in the same kind of, shall we say, mortgage bundling opportunities. And his niece was an assistant U.S. attorney, and you started exposing him. And from what I can read from the record, and I've been doing this as long as anybody out there has. It's been more than 50 years. And frankly, I couldn't see any reason at all for any matter of criminal law being focused on you other than the fact that you were exposing these projects of George Soros that dealt with mortgage bundling. That was through your NAACP committee thing. What happened is some years before that, you had volunteered to restore credit for a lot of ordinary people. And it just happened that one or two of the people out of, what was it, 1,500 or so you helped, something like that?
Over 5,000 people.
5,000 people. One or two of them happened to be involved in this thing that the feds had targeted. And what all you had done is assisted these couple of individuals to get their credit restored, and that had been years before. That was something you volunteered to do. So the assistant U.S. attorney decided that she was going to get rid of you so you weren't such a problem and causing embarrassment, and they brought you in on this case. And the other parties to this case gave evidence that you had nothing to do with what they were doing, and that they didn't even know you other than this come in with a community service you'd volunteered to do. Now, the judge was a black judge, federal judge, but it was his first trial, and he basically didn't know what the devil he was doing. And he went along with allowing Homeland Security to prosecute you, which let them, on their declaration, get you held incommunicado so you could not communicate with anyone. Something happened. You got out of prison early. And it seems that you got out of prison early because they were doing a sting on this facility, and they found that a certain inmate had been getting transported to emergency room services every week or so. And it was for heat prostration. And it turned out the inmate was getting tortured. The torture, I think, well, let's put it this way. I won't go into the gory details, but they're in your book. You got put in a small cubicle and heat lamps got turned on until you passed out. And that was being done until they were trying to get you to recant your accusations. But when they discovered that that was you that was getting literally tortured, you got out. And you've been dedicated to doing something about the situation. And also they seized $3.5 million and other assets from you, if I'm not mistaken, back when. And the affidavit that the U.S. Attorney's Office filed said, although these funds have nothing to do with the instant crime, it may develop that in the future there are criminal activities with which they have a connection. So it's been, what, 12, 15 years, and there's been no connection found, but you still haven't got your money back. And that thing you just got through talking about tax problems for those who just got out, even though the government had seized your money, IRS was saying you were delinquent in paying taxes on them, that money every year. So
Not
you
that
got a
money.
huge...
Not that money. That money was clean.
Oh,
that,
yeah, other peripheral money.
Yeah, that was taxes was paid. It was just sitting in the business bank account for years.
Yeah, well, other funds while you were locked up, they were talking about you were delinquent on that. But people have been getting a little bit, shall we say, freaked out when they found out what happened to you, or find out what happened to you in that mortgage bundling scam. that Soros and others on both sides of the country were involved in, and DAs trying to help him out, which is the problem. And the early example of lawfare used against you, violation of due process, fundamental fairness, everything else, basically to get you to shut up and back off of exposing what became the obvious scandal when we found about these mortgages getting bundled and fraud in foreclosing. So you've been overcoming that. And if anybody wants to see an example of courage and fortitude, they need to get your book and read it, because it's deep. And people have been reading that book, and they've been involving you in criminal justice reform. They've been involving you in preventive measures and generally taking advantage of your expertise to basically make things happen. So the Republican Party is interested in you. The Democratic Party is saying, oh my God, we got to make up for what we did to her. And, you know, so everybody's kind of trying to bring you in as the resident expert, so to speak, on what happens when criminal justice goes way wrong.
Can you pull up her book?
That's just a summation. I just kind of acted like your lawyer and summing it up for the
Can
jury.
can you hold up her book?
I did. Here you go.
Tell us the name of it.
It is called The Pretense of Justice.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, it was backwards. There you go.
Yeah, I had changed the mirroring. Okay.
All right. So it's a pretty good book. And anybody out there, if you want to see how far this can go and what we were talking about, have been talking about, Dana and I, when we were getting into Fannie and Letitia and Fox and Bragg and Smith and all of that crazy bunch up there that are going around doing what we have been styling lawfare. I wrote the foreword. I've been aware of this book and the circumstances for, what is it now, about 8, 9 years, 7, 8 years?
It's been about 5, 6 years, going on 6 years, somewhere
yeah.
around that, because I've been home 7 years. And
yeah.
So, yeah.
I think I had you on this show I do with Valerie Denise. That's where we started talking about this the first go around, if I'm not mistaken. So anyway,
that's where I heard about Dr. Carmen Johnson on the show you do with Valerie Denise as well. I'm going to pin.
By the way, George Soros bought up 400 plus blog talk radio stations on iHeart, and Valerie Denise and I can't do that anymore because Soros kicked off ourselves and anybody else who was conservative trying to control the narrative. So there is that same thing. He hasn't stopped. He wants to parasitically come in here and start sucking the blood out of the country with what he's been doing, with what I know you might not want to say anything that way right now, but I'll call it what it is. It's just outright scamming the American public and trying to control the process and own whoever he chooses to own that would initiate it against good people.
Well, this is why I wanted, when you first came out, Dr. Johnson, to talk about, for you to talk about you being a lobbyist, the importance of public policies, because if if we understand the law, especially locally, what's going on, and a lot of times it's someone like what happened to you in your situation. See, these politicians or people in these powerful positions, they don't want to be exposed, and they don't want us, the regular public, to be educated in civics, and what's going on where we live at. Because if we start paying attention, then we're going to start seeing all of the dirt that they're doing, and corruption. It's a lot of corruption that is going on, and that's why it is important for people to locally pay attention to what's going on locally, especially with these public policies that they pass. Anything else you want to say?
They need to also, the community, they need to be up on what legislation is up to be testified on, and is up to be voted on, and things of that nature. And then you got to go further than that. Then you got to print out the language, and then you got to go through it, because a lot of times they had certain pieces of language into a bill that has nothing to do with that piece of legislation. And so, again, we just don't have the luxuries anymore to just be laid back and partying and hanging out. We really have to be focused on, ourselves, our families, our communities, and we have to start holding others accountable for what they do to us. But if we don't know law, we don't know, we don't know what legislation is out there. If we don't know any of those things, you can't say nothing.
And why should somebody get involved? Answer: because just having an association casually, business, social, charity, doesn't make any difference. Somebody may be the target of lawfare because the people that are in a position to pursue them are doing wrong themselves, and you can get caught up in it just because you have a minor association with them, just a casual one. Somebody walked in your business, somebody you did tax for, somebody that you represented, somebody that you worked on their teeth for. Anything like that could get you caught up in there, and you could have sheer living hell, your finances stripped from you, your liberty taken away from you, your dignity taken away from you, and they try to destroy you. And you and I have talked a lot, and I know what you have expressed over the years. It's gotten better, but I mean, what they did to you was pretty awful. I mean, very seldom have I ever seen anybody in the system get treated like they treated you, just downright torturing you like you were some kind of so-called terrorist, and then bringing in Homeland Security so they could keep you incommunicado and basically in solitary confinement before you even got convicted. So, I mean, it was just absolutely horrible. And by
Well,
the way, if anybody,
isn't that isn't that illegal
yeah,
to?
totally illegal, but they did it anyway because there's nobody over them. That's like we talk about with Fannie Willis talking about they're picking on her. And as we continually observe, who picked on you? You had nobody over you but your citizens who voted you in. So you didn't have to get anybody's okay when you signed off on what Wade got. You didn't have to get anybody's okay about where the money got spent. You didn't have to get anybody's okay about what crimes you charge people with. And you could go off and charge people for RICO for just ordinary First Amendment protected political activity. Or you didn't like what they were saying in a rap song. Or you didn't like a teacher's credit union. See, that's down in Atlanta, but you, Doc, were in Maryland, and they got you just because some years before this happened, out of 5,000 people that you helped get their credit restored, 2 people that they ultimately went after wound up getting you brought in, and they didn't have a shred of evidence. Not, I looked through that, and there was not one shred of evidence that connected you with anything other than having helped 2 of these people restore their credit several years before. And that's just a travesty. And if anybody needs motivation to get involved with this kind of thing, this is it.
I have a question. So, public policies, when you are working with legislation, state level, right? How long does it actually take to get a law passed or public policy passed? Like how long, and how much effort do people need to put into that?
Well, so for me and my interns, every year for the last few years, we've been getting legislation passed because that's how good we are. and we get started early. So like, for example, legislation session ends April the 8th, which is, I think is Saturday or something like that. And so we get started. And so our next piece of legislation is going to help women that are victims of domestic violence and who are still behind the wall, who have received more time than their victim, than their abuser. And a lot of times the man that has abused her, he may get 7 or 8 years and she may get 20, right? And so we are putting together a pilot program that will bring women home that are victims of domestic violence and their abuser got less time to them, or the abuser got no time. And so we figure we get started in April. We start pushing out the draft legislation to state senators and delegates in Maryland, and it may take us to probably by August, we should have sponsors for the legislation. But, you know, my nonprofit, my interns and I, we are known to have innovative legislation, stuff that people don't even think about because everybody is so busy. They all are stuck in one box and they all are thinking alike. But we always get legislation or create draft legislation that's totally different. And so, you know, they have no choice but to pass it. And then, you know, of course, we have to go through the process of going back and forth with the legislative people that are in Annapolis. And that's usually tedious because a lot of times, a lot of the language is watered down, or, you know, we end up with some other pieces in there that we initially didn't want in there. So it's like a negotiation. So we'll probably start negotiations like September, October. And then January 6th or whatever, 2026 will be when legislation sessions start up again. So from January to April. And so that we usually, we get our stuff passed.
Doc, I like doing projects with these students about justice reform.
I love it. But we also, you know, work with students that are taking up sociology, psychology, human services, communications, journalism, public policy, public relations, all different areas of law, from international law, corporate law, criminal law. Like we all, my focus is on the youth, the young people that are our future leaders, because I want to be in that wheelchair and be able to call little Johnny at the White House when I'm, you know, 90 years old and say, hey, send the president plane to come get me. And, you know, I want to come and have dinner at the White House. And so, you know, I have, you know, created leaders with probably about 45 interns in the last few years, and I can absolutely call them for anything. And they are all absolutely amazing. And I don't think I know everything. It's times when they have to save me, and it's times when I have to save them. And they are probably the only people on this planet that I trust, and that's my interns.
Well, let's see. You've got an eclectic mix. I think they're bi-coastal. You have them at Howard University Law School. You have some at my old alma mater, UCLA Law School. Mm-hmm. You're working closely with all of them on a lot of legislators are approaching you about getting legislative reform. And by the way, I do highly commend you to the current administration about getting pardoned. If anybody deserves it, it's you.
I know, you know, Judge, you always talk about a pardon, and I know you tell me don't say this, but I don't want a pardon. I want a full investigation into what happened to me. And the thing is, you know, they want to hold us accountable for things that we did do and things that we didn't do. And people need to know, I need to understand, who was it that hated me that much? I mean, I have my suspicions, but who hated me that much where they wanted to send a woman, humanitarian, a Buddhist of over 30 years to a jail, prison camp and cage, and then wanted her beat and all kinds of stuff. It's just a horrific thing. I'm asking for a full investigation into my case.
You deserve that. And by the way, I would suggest to you, and I've been talking to you about it, they're just callous. They don't care. If you're in the way, you get steamrolled. You're just a nuisance. Bring in the bug spray. Get rid of somebody because you don't want something buzzing around your picnic. And that's what they kind of did to you. Just total callousness. And what is it I tell you all the time? The Bill of Rights exists to prevent what happened to you, but people ignore it, and there seems to be a move afoot to just completely forget about that Bill of Rights. I find it interesting to contrast some little privileged, pampered poodles who were on spring break and they were being questioned about U.S. trivia. How many amendments are in the Bill of Rights? One said 3, one said 13, one said 19. What's the Second Amendment? Oh, isn't that the one that gives you the right to vote? Okay, who did the colonists fight during the Revolutionary War? Spain, France, Germany? Those were the answers they came up with. What is this one about being free from search and seizure? Huh? I guess, they don't care. They don't perceive themselves as being subject to this kind of thing, but it is so easy to become not only subjected to such, but to be actually truly victimized and exploited by such things. And people just don't pay attention, but they need to read your book so they get it. And all of these folk that, out there, that have lived in ivory towers that write these books that the woke folk like to quote all the time. I've read some of them, and frankly, most of them just don't get it. They are interesting tomes of theory, but they don't deal with real world practicality. And the people that are involved, for the most part, haven't had much real world experience, but you have.
So I want to ask you one last question. If you are a regular person, let's say such as myself, and it's something where you live at that you need changed or improved or worked on, right? Public policy or even a law. Should people, what is the first step that someone should do? Like, is it okay? So if I want to go to my representative who represent that district, should I come with like, how do you call it? Like a petition, like a list of names in that community saying, we all signed this for this specific public policy to be passed, or this agenda to be presented for you to, work on. This is something that we need. Like, do you accumulate signatures in your community and then you present it to your representative, whether it's city council or state representative for your district, attached with an agenda?
So with the way that my interns and I do, we go ahead and we do all the research first. We do all the research and then we put together the draft legislation that we want to see. And then we go in and then we secure our sponsors. So we kind of do it backwards, but that's the way my mind thinks anyway. I don't think like normal people. And then we get our sponsors and then we start advocating to the community, letting them, because I already know that what my interns and I put together is boss, right? And so once we get our sponsors, the senators and the delegates to sign off on it, then that's when we go and start, recruiting the community to testify in person or give written testimony when the time comes and things like that. Because what here in Maryland, people, some people don't like to do the work. So they'll go and they'll take your stuff. And then you turn around and be like, what happened? They took your stuff. So for me, I like to secure those sponsors first before I really go public. But
you say take your stuff. You mean take your
stuff, yeah.
policy idea?
Yeah.
Oh.
Some people can't think for themselves, so they
Right.
say your stuff. Yeah.
And you know what? That's and I definitely want to have you come back on, and because I want to interview you with things of that nature, because I've actually know someone who experienced that. And I think people don't understand, because a lot of times that happens like in business, or if you're a content creator and people want to steal your content or your image or whatever. You don't think about that really happening when it comes to politics, local, national, doesn't matter. But I get it happens. It happens a lot, and it's like a common practice. So it's like protecting your work.
Yep. Protecting your work. But I want to thank you for having me on, you and the judge, and I appreciate you guys. And I look forward to coming back on your show to talk about public policy and things of that nature.
Yes,
Love you both. Thank you.
I will be in contact because I already have some ideas.
All right. Have a good evening.
I just wanted to boost your book because I'm so sick of reading garbage nonsense that people are trying to pimp with.
Yes.
That yours is real and it's grounded on hard experience, and I think people really need to read it. And it's available, isn't it, on Amazon?
Yeah,
Yep.
I pinned the link in the chat. I'm gonna put it in the description. There's a couple of people I see in the chat. They say they just bought it, so it is pinned in the chat. So guys, please go and purchase Dr. Carmen Johnson book, The Pretense of Justice, Black and White, by Dr. Carmen Johnson. So
One last question. I get this all the time. People say you should just go with the flow and, stop trying to rock the boat. Go along to get along so you don't have any trouble. Or would you say go full speed ahead and cause all the trouble you can trying to do right? Which would you?
As a Buddhist, I'm just trying to do what's right. So what's wrong if I'm sitting there and seeing things that are being done wrong to my people and to the community, and I'm just sitting there not doing anything because I don't want to rock no boats. I think that that's wrong, and I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. So I guess I would go with that second one that you said. Like, I mean, because right now, you and I are drafting a letter to the president of the United States. And I'm like, okay, they may try to kill me this time, but I can't worry about that.
It's an interesting thing about being able to sleep easily at night. Some people don't get that, and they have all kinds of trouble sleeping. And they have all kinds of guilt complexes and self-hate because what are they doing? What is their purpose? Their karma is negative. But proud of you, so I want you back so we can just kind of turn it over to you and you can start giving us the latest spiel on what you're trying to do, because you and I talk a lot and it's important you doing what you do. And you've been able to bring people in. See, you're not like Chicken George, Al Sharpton, or Roly Poly, Chocolate Chip Cookie Mix, Martin. You are the real deal, and you can talk to people and you can get stuff done. They just run their mouth off and get a paycheck under the table or over the table, but you sit there and actually do something for the people. So I want you to tell folk next time all about that. You can run with it. I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Well, next time I'll be telling y'all how the president cologne smelt when I went to the White House.
Yeah, well, I'm helping you draft that letter. Hey.
All right. Talk to y'all later.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, great guess. Definitely going to have her back on. Thank you, Dr. Carmen Johnson. Appreciate you coming on. So I want to get into this. I want to get into
what did to that lady is what was rumored to have been happening at Gitmo down there at the U.S. Naval Base, Guantanamo, Cuba. They were literally torturing her like they would somebody that was involved in Al Qaeda that tried to pull off another 911. Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't, but like they used to. And that's what they did to her. They almost killed that woman several times. Now, That said, she had a whole lot of courage to persevere through stuff that I've seen a lot of old so-called OGs can't handle. So one other thing I'd just like to offer, the judge on this case that she had, it was his first trial. He didn't know what the hell he was doing, and he was a literal embarrassment to the profession with the cowardice that he displayed. And unfortunately, he was a Negro.
Yeah. All right. So I'm definitely going to have her back on. So let's move on to this. The New Mexico Republican Party headquarters targeted in suspected arson attack. What is this? The commercial just played. So why is it playing it again?
When you stop it, it'll loop back so you get the commercial.
We are back now with the burned entrance of the New Mexico Republican Party in Albuquerque. The party says the fire was arson, calling it politically motivated. Graffiti on the building said ICE equals KKK. Police are now investigating the cause. It is time now for your Monday weather.
Ray,
Good morning, everyone.
KKK when they're protecting the citizens from this foreign invasion? I don't get it. What kind of mindset is that? We have a critical thing here, but people just want to throw the doors open and say, come on in. What do we have? 30 to 50 million extra people in this country. So now we're not at 360 million. We're at 410 million. Population is getting more and more crowded. The jobs are getting harder to find. The benefits are becoming more scarce. Inflation is rampant, and we find all of the resources being used for somebody that really has no connection to this country, and people are upset because convicted felons, murderers, rapists, major drug dealers are running at large and not subject to control, and we've brought them in here, the worst of the worst, and these people are calling the people charged, well, the individuals charged, ICE, immigration control, that's supposed to be somehow KKK, like they want to equate this group of illegal aliens and the folk that have violated Title 8, Section 1324 of the United States Criminal Codes by doing what they do, setting up sanctuary cities to deal with stopping that kind of thing. That's supposed to be the Klan. This is crazy.
Yeah, it says, so a fire that damaged the entryway to the New Mexico Republican Party headquarters in Albuquerque is being investigated as arson. No suspect has been named in the Sunday morning blaze that's under investigation by local authorities, the FBI, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosive. Incendiary materials were found on the scene, according to ATF. Spray paint on the side of the building read ICE equal KKK. During a Monday press conference in front of a burnt entryway, which was covered with powerwood and had two burnt doors propped against it, Republican leaders described the fire as deliberate attack. I believe it is too, because they put ICE equal KKK. So I guess they're trying to equivalent that with the deep mass deportations. But that's what over 80% of the Americans, that's why they voted Trump into office, to do these mass deportations. But it seemed like it's like
immigration control and enforcement somehow becomes equated with the Klan because it's trying to protect the American people.
Right. And that's what I'm like.
That's a little subtle attempt to do a psychological association in the gullible mind that somehow or another these terrorists, these murderers, these rapists, these drug dealers these gangsters that spilled out of the penitentiaries down south of the border are somehow or another on the same level with the black folk that the Klan was trying to suppress. Not going for it.
Right. But see, it's like it's a small group of these fake radicals. And even when we look at the people that's burning down the Tesla dealerships, harassing people driving Teslas, it's a small group of crazy incels.
And by the way, one of these guys that got him a nice Cybertruck, one of the all-wheel drives with 860 some horsepower, is going to lose it and shoot one of these fools if he catches him. It's not supposed to be allowable to use deadly force just to deal with property matters, but somebody's likely to lose it and take one of them out.
Well, I want to share this.
And nobody, and you notice our cupcake Democratic congressmen and senators are not saying, hey, stop this. This isn't right. They're egging it on. Look at
I want to share this clip here.
Look at Crockett.
You got to get scared that people who are not criminals are getting like lassoed up and deported and sent to like El Salvador prisons. I read some story. It was Glenn Greenwald.
The gay barber guy. Yeah. It's scary, man.
Is that true? Is that story accurate?
With a bunch of these Agua guys, allegedly they got at least one guy who wasn't a criminal, who was just a gay barber who I think, according to the story, came here legally. When you do things quickly and you do things aggressively, that's how you get done. But that's also when mistakes get made.
Right.
And I think a human being being plucked out of nowhere and ending up in a country he's never been in a maximum security prison with gang members, seems like a bad thing to happen to me.
It's horrific. It's horrific.
I don't think that should be controversial.
No, that's not controversial at all.
Stop right there. That's what happened to Dr. Carmen Johnson for trying to help American citizens protect their rights. That's what happened to a full-fledged, born in America, American citizen who had been doing right. But they're more concerned about what's happening to the occasionally illegal. Granted, they're entitled to due process. Is this person, what the polite phrase is, an undocumented alien or, undocumented migrant? Let's be nice about it. If he's got documents, then that ends the problem. And excuse us, we offer an apology, by the way, which they have not done to Dr. Johnson yet, or many others in her circumstances I'm aware of. And nobody's apologized to our current president, Donald Trump, for using the same kind of lawfare on him. But I guess it's all right to use this kind of stuff on American citizens, but the left is horrified that you would use it by accident on a migrant. Now, I understand this, but everybody's got their rights. Where American law applies, you need due process. That's just our way of doing stuff. But hell, somebody needs to get a sense of proportion here.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that's bad for the cause. Like, the cause is, let's get the gang members out. Everybody agrees. But let's not innocent gay hairdressers get lumped up with the gangs. And then, like, how long before that guy can get out? Is there any plan in place to alert the authorities that they've made a horrible mistake and correct it?
Well, if you think about it from a government perspective.
May I ask a question? What the hell does him being gay got to do with this? Is he a human? Is he a citizen? What's his gayness got to do with this? Why does that even come in there? That's like,
and this is where I think
who like to do it reverse cowgirl.
Gets quite sinister is once you've done that, the incentive structure is never going to be to admit that and deal with it. The incentive structure is to say nothing, to cover it up, to pretend it didn't happen.
But
right?
That is horrible.
So someone ends up in a black hole.
So basically, his argument is, you're doing a lot of roundup of illegals, and they're not all gang members. And the ones that are not all gang members could have been here for 10 years or whatever, or it could be a logistic problem. But listen, this is not fairy tale. This is not equality. You are here. You are not a citizen. You don't even have a green card. You have no papers. You are here. You're getting round up. We'll deal with all the paperwork legalities or who you are and how long you've been here later. You getting round up and you leaving. Blame the Biden administration for allowing 20 million plus people to cross that border within 4-5 years.
Maybe 50 million. But my reaction to that is, hey, I grew up in Los Angeles, California, and I was born in Washington, D.C., as American as it gets. And all of the times, when I was growing up, junior high, high school, college, we got thrown on a wall by LAPD, jacked up and thrown in just because we happened to be DWB, driving while black. And it used to be real bad. It's changed up even in LA now. It's not like it used to be, but hell, it used to be like, Fritz, you will ask him for his papers, yeah? Your papers, please. What are you talking about, man? You mean like driver's license? Do you have your papers? It's like, hey, man, are you auditioning for, Colonel Fritz or something in Logan's Heroes or something about a Nazi prison camp? What's the matter with you? That's what we grew up doing. So, people are all upset on the left about somebody might get caught up in this, but it still happens in the system right now for people who are born here. If you want to talk about fundamental fairness, let's talk about that, but let's not talk about displacing good Americans with a very limited financial set of resources to deal with American citizens who are on the down and out, not the ones that just freeload forever, but the ones that have a real life temporary emergency situation. They can't get any help. What about all those homeless out there that Maxine Wastewater, remember when she said, you people are embarrassing. Why don't you just go home? Well, I'm saying, lady, what's the matter? Have you lost your mind? We don't have homes to go to. That's what we're out here protesting about. We're homeless.
Well, I did it 1 second. I did an X space on Sunday, and we were talking about particularly do illegals pay taxes? Because I want to play this quick clip of Jasmine Crockett. She, I don't know where she was at, but I think she was at the U.S. House, one of their press conference. She was saying how the undocumented, that's particular undocumented, i.e. illegals, they pay billions, hundreds of billions of dollars in taxes. I beg to disagree.
To be clear, undocumented folk contribute approximately $100 billion in taxes. They pay into Social Security and they don't get to draw down on it. So stop, again, allowing them to divide us and to demonize them. To be clear.
Damn lie. And the point of the exercise is Miss Coonskin head cap. Miss Crockett got on that Davy Crockett coonskin weave, and those barn door eyebrows, the eyelashes she flaps around. That is being a coon, by the way. When they started using this, they weren't talking about people that collaborated with white folk. That wasn't the definition of coon. It was one of these buck dancing, fool acting Negroes that was always acting silly, stupid, and ignorant. That's what a coon was. So that, what is it, Davy Crockett? You remember that when they had the popular thing?
No, I don't. I was not.
Everybody, all the kids in the country wore coonskin hats with caps with the coon tails. They were artificial, but that's what they look like. So I guess she got all that coon going up through the roots into her wig weave. So she's got that coon skin cap of a weave job she's got on top of her head, or the wig outright. So this is
Well,
what coon sounds like. That's stupid and foolish. And that is no damn justification. And that's only coming out of places like California. Can I add one little quick something? How many of us have been standing in long lines at the DMV to get one of these real ID driver's licenses with the star in it? The reason all of us have been having to pay 28 to 140 or so dollars to get a replacement license with the star, to stand in line, to have to order birth certificates, find out how to do that, pay anywhere from 20, 25 to several $100s to get one, is because of states like California, where she ought to be instead of Texas, New York and New Jersey, that decided they were going to give illegals, criminals who have broken the law to get in here, sneak in here, they were going to give them driver's licenses. So that threw that whole equation out for the other 47 states in the union about being able to use a driver's license as a valid indication that you are an American citizen, or at least known, and you're here with legal status because of that. See, there are consequences that impact everybody. In May 7th, you won't be able to get on an airplane if you don't have passport or one of these IDs. And by the way, the crazy part about it, a lot of states won't even let you use a passport as sufficient ID. You still have to get your birth certificate. Thank you, California. Yeah.
so here's the thing. So I want to play this clip, you know, speaking of you calling her a coon, because in this clip, she's actually calling Byron Donald a coon for marrying a white woman. So let me play this clip.
And if we continue to put people into office, and that even means some of our skinfolk who definitely are not our kinfolk, such as Byron Donalds, who are going to continue to say that, like, I mean, the fact that you sitting around talking about life was better under Jim Crow, like, is this because you don't understand history? Or literally it's because you married a white woman and so you think that whitewashed you? I'm not really sure, like, what it is.
Well,
but
you
I
couldn't
need
even be married to a white woman under Jim
correct,
Crow.
correct. And it took Joy to call him out. So I'm like, bruh, like, what are you talking about? Like, what are you saying? Like, he just out here, you know, I feel like they give him his talking points and he's like, yes, massa, I got it.
So they're accusing her of being racist. That's not the case, but at the same time, Byron Donald, he has made comments that weren't too kosher when talking about Black Americans, i.e. anybody that says, well, we were better under Jim Crow. But he also clarified that said he was not talking about the public policies and the laws that was in place, more so there were more Black family units during that time, more Black families, which is true. But to those saying that he's married to a white woman and stuff like that, listen, her queen, Jasmine Crockett queen, Kamala Harris, married to a white man, Ketanji, white man, Ileana Omar, white man, AOC, white man. So a lot of Black women that are married to white men and women of color married to white men. So him having a white wife has nothing to do with.
You mean, not that there's anything wrong with it, but just the hypocrisy of it. You mean Mrs. Imhoff married to somebody that's a Jewish lawyer and adopted his 2 Jewish children, that one, and she wants to be a fan of that person and talk about this guy. And by the way, what he was talking about was not things were better under Jim Crow. What he was talking about was Black Americans had their shit together when there was Jim Crow, better than they do now.
Right, exactly. So, all right, moving on to Wisconsin. I want to move on to Wisconsin because tomorrow, Tuesday, that's a big important day for the state of Wisconsin, because the voters in Wisconsin is heading to the polls to decide whether conservative Brad Schimel or liberal Susan Crawford will fill the state Supreme Court open seat. The outcome determines if the state's highest court will lean 4-3 ideologically left or right, and with issues from abortion to redistricting potentially on the line. The statewide face-off is garnering national attention from both sides of the aisle. On the right, we have Trump and billionaire Elon Musk, who have gone all in, throwing their political and monetary weight behind Schimel, that's Schimel. Overall, because
Yeah.
overall the campaign spending for this has broken records. It said overall spending in this race has already surpassed previous records for the country's most expensive court race, which was set 2 years ago, also in Wisconsin. This year number has exceeded over $100 million.
I think Wisconsin, frankly, has set themselves up for a mess because of the way they've implemented the situation. Now, I find it interesting. There's been a flip the script thing. The liberal element no longer supports the Bill of Rights. They act like they are something out of a time machine that got recruited by Adolf Hitler or Benito Mussolini when it comes to abridging the Bill of Rights. They're calling for restrictions on the First Amendment or further amendments to revise it. They're talking about getting rid of the Second Amendment, restricting the Fourth Amendment, that's search and seizure, Fifth Amendment, self-incrimination and due process of law on the federal level, and doing some stuff with the 14th, which they want to get rid of some of the protections of due process that applied to the state in that amendment. What's wrong with them? But the right wing, the conservative bunch, 35 years ago, 40 years ago, used to occasionally step on the Bill of Rights because they were interested in law and order. And when you gave defendants the criminal element, they called it, all of these rights, you tried to subvert law and order was more important. Well, now that things have changed and the liberals are trying to protect their rainbow cult situation, they're beginning to engage in lawfare like they did with Dr. Johnson, like they did with President Trump and some others, the teachers union, the rap artist. We've been working with that situation. That's what happens when you don't pay careful attention to your rights. They get nibbled on by rats.
Right.
Who want to take it away.
I want to read a little bit more of this here. So it says, who's running in the Wisconsin Supreme Court election? So we have Schimel, Schimel. I guess I'm pronouncing his name right.
Spell it.
Huh?
How do you spell it?
Schimel.
Schimel?
Schimel. Schimel.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm saying Schimel.
Yeah, that's good as whatever. But
Right.
see,
so let me just read this. Let me read this. So,
judicial races should not be this partisan.
Okay, so let me read this. He entered the Supreme Court race after losing the 2018 bid for re-election as a state attorney general. He faces Susan Crawford, a circuit court judge in Dane County, which includes the city of Madison. Both have received backing from big names on the left and the right. Crawford received an endorsement from Tim Walz. And of course, Schimel, he received the endorsement of Trump, but also a lot of money from Elon Musk. And Elon Musk's been down there holding town halls. And of course, he knows people that have deep pockets. Elon Musk, he spent $20 million to help Schimel.
You know what? The interesting thing is I see all of the woke minority folk supporting the liberal element. But when you do that, I mean, that side of things, that ethnic grouping tends to be most victimized by inappropriate government action through the wrong kind of police or sheriff's department, the wrong kind.
So
And it really needs protection. And when they support the far left, the liberal element, they're not getting protection for that Bill of Rights. They're actually getting people that are trying to destroy. You have a right to remain silent. No unreasonable search and seizures without a proper warrant and probable cause. All of that's supposed to go. It's lawfare.
mhm. Well, it says here, because of course there's always a little bit of controversy if Elon Musk is involved. The world's richest man handed out a series of $1 million checks to voters who signed his petition in opposition to activist judges. Musk's Political Action Committee, America PAC, had announced a petition on X early in March and promised $100 in cash to each person who signs, but made no mentions of grand prizes. Now, let me share this. Let me share this, because they're always trying to block everything he does. So a Wisconsin Supreme Court rejects the Democrats' AG attempt to block Elon Musk's $1 million giveaway to voters.
Wait a minute. You know what? What's so funny about that is the Democratic Party around in the Memphis area, Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, they used to give, well, Judge Brown, Jesus Christ, we used to give your people something for they vote. Shiny new quarter, slice of watermelon, and a shot of whiskey. Yes, we did. Hey.
So it says here, the Wisconsin court unanimously decided not to hear a last-minute attempt by the state attorney general seeking to prevent Elon Musk from giving away $1 million checks on Sunday. News came just before the Tesla CEO was sent to host America PAC Town Hall in Green Bay Sunday night. Musk handed over $1 million in checks to two voters who signed the petition against activist judges. The reason for the checks is that it's really just to get attention, Musk said, while holding a gigantic check. It's like, we need to get attention somewhat inevitably. When I do this, it causes the legacy media to like kind of lose their minds.
I love it. I love it.
So Badger State voters elect Wisconsin Supreme Court justices to 10-year terms. So this tomorrow election on Tuesday in Wisconsin for the Supreme Court, if it's Schimel or if it's Crawford, they're going to be there for 10 years.
Well, I mean, Tennessee is 8. I got elected to 2 8-year terms. So, you know,
that's pretty much a considerably a long time before
well, the idea is
re-election.
The idea is to keep you insulated from public passion so you can be analytical and critical in the application of the law.
Right. So it's like, that's a yes. And that you need more than 2 years, more than 4 years to do that, basically.
Yeah. So Tennessee, it's 8 years, and I got elected to 2 of those terms. And in this state, it's 10. There are also things like modified Missouri plans and stuff like that that come in when a person is holding office. Do you wish to retain this person as a judge or not? If it's retained, then there's no election. But if it's a vote, get rid of him, then he has to stand election against an opponent if one decides to file against him. There are all kinds of ways of keeping it from getting to turn into a partisan circus, but
yeah,
it is what it is.
So basically, so far, because this is going to be a tight race tomorrow, there are no obvious leaders in Wisconsin court election polls. There is no clear-cut leader between Crawford and Brad Schimel. A poll that was done last week by a nonpartisan group, SoCal Strategies, found Crawford with 50 to 42 lead over Brad Schimel, but that easily changes. So
which one is the supposed conservative and which one is supposed to be
conservative? Is Crawford, the woman. She's the liberal one. The conservative is Brad Schimel. That's the one that Trump and Musk is backing. And this is for a judge, for to be sitting in the
Supreme Court justice.
Yes, for 10 years.
Is that for a full 10-year term or to fill the remainder of the term that has been vacated?
Susan Crawford is her name. No, it's for the full 10 years because that's what it said here when I was reading it.
All right, well, okay. Sometimes they get that wrong.
Because I guess it's a seat that needs to be filled.
It's
So,
vacant. In other words,
yeah,
yeah. But
yeah.
sometimes what they do is somebody's in there for a 10-year term, and after year 3, they bail or retire or whatever it may be, or resign. So there's 6-7 years left.
Mhm.
And somebody's running for the remainder of the term. It depends on the state.
Mhm,
I'm
mhm.
privy to Wisconsin law.
Right. So, you know, hey, if you guys, anybody out there in Wisconsin, honestly, I'm not going to sit up here and say vote for Brad Schimel because he's a conservative, or because Trump endorsed him. You really got to look at where they stand on certain issues. Number one, definitely we talk about voter ID, citizenship, um, illegals, education, stuff like that, crime. What are some of the things that people need to consider when they are voting judges into office?
I would say, in my experience, what kind of respect does a person have for due process of law? The more strict they are in enforcing it, the better for the ordinary citizen. How are they about probable cause and search and seizure? How are they about respecting the right to remain silent? Those 3 things, I think, override all the rest, because a person who is prone to being zealous in supporting those 3 things is quite likely to be of the same mind as people who are interested in the other things you mentioned. In other words, abortion's going to come up every now and then, if ever, but search and seizure is going to come up all the time. Your First Amendment rights. Are you going to have January 6 persecutions, or are you going to have freedom of speech? Those things are very important. If you're talking about freedom of speech, you're talking about advocacy for various positions. And if you destroy free speech, the rest of it is meaningless. So what are they going to do when they support those things? Free speech, I think, is a number one issue. The other 3 I mentioned are just an outlook on the way the law is to be applied. I can't hear you.
Oh, I didn't realize I was muted. I want to touch on this a little bit now, but then maybe when we pre-record for the Injustice for All, we could probably go a little bit deeper, because by that time, the vote for the SAFE Act will be on the House floor to be voted on. So let me share this. Let me make it bigger like this. So this week, the House will be voting on the SAFE Act, Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, or i.e. the SAFE Act. This bill requires individuals to provide documentary proof of U.S. citizenship when registering to vote in federal elections. Specifically, the bill prohibits states from accepting and processing an application to register the vote in federal election unless the applicant presents documentary proof of U.S. citizenship. The bill specifies what documents are considered acceptable proof of U.S. citizenship, such as identification that complies with the Real ID Act of 2005 that indicates U.S. citizenship. Further, the bill prohibits states from registering an individual to vote in federal elections unless at the time the individual applies to register to vote, the individual provides documentary proof of U.S. citizenship, requires state to establish alternative process under which an applicant may submit other evidence to demonstrate U.S. citizenship. Each state must take affirmative steps on ongoing basis to ensure that only U.S. citizens are registered to vote, which shall include establishing a program to identify individuals who are not U.S. citizens using information supplied by certain sources. Additional states must remove non-citizens from their official list of eligible voters. The bill allows for a private right of action against an election official who registers an applicant to vote in federal election who fails to present documentary proof of U.S. citizenship. And the bill establishes criminal penalties for certain offenses, including registering an applicant to vote in federal election who fails to present documentary proof of U.S. citizenship.
Okay, there has to be some way of streamlining that because, okay, you need now a birth certificate in order to get these real ID things, okay? I applied for my birth certificate from Washington, D.C. About 30 some years ago. I needed a copy to get a passport. I made a phone call and I got the birth certificate less than 72 hours later on a phone call. I went through the phone call, tried to go online, all kinds of stuff. I was born in Washington, D.C. I made that application at the beginning of June. I did not get my birth certificate until a week ago. It took all that time to get my birth certificate, a week and a half ago. Now, the other thing that is crazy, it's supposed to make sure you're an American citizen, right? So your licenses without the star in them are not valid to establish your citizenship anymore, thanks to California, etc. But guess what kind of ID you had to provide to get your birth certificate? The non-valid ID. You had to send them a photocopy of your non-valid driver's license. So all that did, assuming you were some espionage agent, terrorist, or let's say gate crashing illegal, all you had to do was just move it back one step and get an invalid ID to get what you needed to get a valid ID. Doesn't make any sense. You just added a step to it, but you didn't do anything about securing it. And see, you have other problems that are not only reflected in this kind of requirement, which I don't think is a bad one, but I think maybe there needs to be some other kind of streamlining to the process. You have to maybe just show one of these driver's licenses. And I think what they ought to do in fundamental fairness is say, since California, New York, New Jersey, et cetera, are saying we're licensing illegals, just say the other 47 states, all you have to do is show a valid driver's license, which is complied with all of the regulations we had before. And for California, you need a special one that verifies that this license is only issued to those who are, in fact, American citizens. So maybe that would be the better way of doing it.
Okay.
Because it's real onerous. Did you see that article I sent you the other day about what's going on with this? They've got lines down and around the block that are taking hours to complete their process through to get these licenses. So, I mean,
no, you didn't send me that article,
well,
but
I'll send it to you. They were talking about around the country in many, many states, including mine. They've got lines that go out the front door, down the end of the block, around the corner, and down the other side of the block waiting to get these licenses. It's crazy.
so here's the thing though, because I said this at the beginning of the show that the Democrats, their only MO is to say no to any bill that a Republican brings to the floor, whether it's the Senate or the House, no matter how bipartisan it is, no matter how much sense it makes, because this SAFE Act bill is common sense. And it's just making sure that only citizens, US citizens, are voting. So why would you want to think that your vote is being suppressed. Again, here we go. We have Jasmine Crockett. Mind you, they didn't vote yet. So this is definitely going to be making news in the media later on in the week. But so far today, here she go. The SAVE Act is yet another bogus attempt by Republicans to suppress the vote. And this time they're targeting women. This bill would make it damn near impossible for millions of women who changed their last name after marriage to cast a ballot. Let's be clear, this isn't about election integrity. It's about voter suppression. And trust my Dem Women Caucus colleagues and I are not letting it slide.
That woman is an idiot.
Well, she's not the only idiot, because you're talking about the Democrat Women's Caucus. They have
just if the shoe fits.
So,
by the way, in my opinion, as a former criminal defense lawyer and as a criminal court judge, Jasmine Crockett has crossed the line on specifically advocating violence, inciting riotous or disorderly conduct and behavior. So, I mean, she's immune to anything she says on the House floor as per the U.S. Constitution, but not elsewhere. She's immune traveling to arrest except for felonies and treasons, going to and from her district to the House, but not elsewhere. And she's been running her big mouth off about, well, things that could be easily construed as inciting riotous or disorderly or violent and criminal behavior. So she's soliciting under a number of state laws, and she's doing it in a fashion that evokes interstate communications and commerce, the mails and other stuff. So, I mean, she's been committing some things that are arguably felonies that could lead to her prosecution.
So it says here, this is a woman, I guess she was at a city town hall, local town hall. It says no woman's married name matches their birth certificate, thus making them ineligible to vote. The SAVE Act will suppress women's vote. Now, mind you, under the Biden administration, this same type of bill was presented. It was named something different, and you had the Congressional Black Caucus and all these black media heads talking about, oh, they're trying to suppress black people from voting. But they know they cannot no longer lead with that narrative. So now they're saying, oh, they're trying to suppress women from voting.
Garbage. I know a woman that's been married 4 times and has a passport. I know somebody's been married 6 times with a current passport. What's that got to do with it? Getting a passport is no more difficult than getting a registration card to vote. So that's garbage.
Here's the thing, though. You are registered when you get married. You change your name on all your documentations, your passport, your state ID, your driver's license. So when you go and you present your driver's license to vote or other documentation, they don't ask for your birth certificate for voting. So
no, but that's what they're talking about doing. But the point is,
no, they're not talking about doing that.
But here's the thing: if you got to get this star license, real ID, most states issue your voter's registration credentials through the DMV. So when you apply for one, presenting your ID to get your birth certificate to get your real ID, thanks California, they can fix you up when it comes down to your to your voter's registration, because it's the same thing. A lot of states, you get your handgun carry permit, driver's license, and voter's registration cards at the DMV.
Here's the thing. This is what I'm just trying to understand. I'm not even trying to. I don't understand what the Democrats are. They take
nothing. They're just relying on ignorance to get people all worked up about some issue.
They take something and they try to remix it, and they create a fake narrative. So if I am married before the SAVE Act, before Trump was elected for the second time, before Biden was elected, right? I was married. I was voting. How did I vote before? Because my married name is on the, when they look your name up when you go in and vote on the scroll. My married name is on my license. My married name is on all of my documentations except for my birth certificate. Duh. But I was able to vote after I got married.
Well, it's the same.
So what's the difference?
It's the same kind of narrative as Trump is reimposing segregation. He signed an executive order. I know it's a fact. I read it. No, you didn't read it. What you wound up getting conflated with reimposing segregation was no boys in the girls' bathrooms or shower facilities, no boys in sports bras and panties competing against the girls. That ain't got nothing to do with racial segregation. So, that's how you phrase it. And I think this deliberate obfuscation of intent, purpose, and the reality is just another one of these fascist propaganda tactics. And I think the Democratic Party ought to be deeply ashamed of itself. But of course, it's not.
Well, speaking of the Democrat Party, let's move to Memphis, i.e. more so Tennessee, right?
And you mean that the state legislative body dominated by the Republican Party is probably going to take over the local Democratic dominated Board of Education in Memphis?
No, not that. This. So,
that idiot.
State Representative Justin Pearson, who lunges towards a Republican during a debate. And I want to play this. This is 5 minutes, and I'm sorry. This was total embarrassment.
Well, can I ask you a question? Is he playing T.D. Jakes, Malcolm X, or Martin Luther King in this little display?
So when I play it, you could decipher it for yourself because I think he has all those people wrapped up in one. So yeah.
The Tennessee House of Representatives. It is a pathetic excuse for you to not answer the question of why we are doing nothing about the gun violence epidemic than to personally attack me. But let me explain to you what I have been doing, Representative, since you asked. My brother, Temperance Darnell Pearson, one of the loves of my life, passed away from gun suicide on December 1st of 2024. And since that happened, it shattered my family like gun violence has shattered so many families. Shattered my nephew's lives, my mother, my father, my other brothers who are remaining. I buried my brother. I planned for his entire funeral. My fiance made his obituary. I made sure that he was taken care of, even in death. That's what I've been doing. But also, not just that, I went to all of my nephew's schools. I met with their principals and their teachers to ensure that they are okay. I gave them and made sure that they had grief counseling and that they're seeing a psychiatrist. That's what I've been doing. And while you're talking about hard work, you need to realize that our job is not just in this state house with these marble floors. Our jobs are on the streets and in the communities that we serve. And so while you've been here passing bills that have been hurting transgender children, while you've been here passing bills that have been hurting the poor, hurting the marginalized, hurting the disenfranchised, while you've been here passing bills that have not ended poverty, while you've been here passing bills that have not helped people who need Medicaid expansion, while you've been here doing the hard work of making sure that our state is not the state that it can be, because you have decided.
Representative Pearson.
Reality of our situation is only to be.
Representative Pearson.
While you've been here doing that, I've been in my community.
Representative Pearson.
Meeting with young people, going to school, rhetoric.
Representative Pearson.
Voters. That's what I've been doing. Hard work doesn't just happen with this legislation. It happens.
Representative Pearson.
And if you will, Chairman, just one more minute, because Chairman Former seems to think that he somehow.
Representative Pearson.
Seems to understand my life better than I do. You need to understand that hard work isn't just sitting there and shutting up and passing a bill. It's doing the hard work of justice and love and mercy.
Okay.
And it's taking your
all right.
And your pain and your heartache, and it's standing in front of people who you know may not like you, standing in front of people who you know will disrespect you, people who you know will talk down to you, and saying in the honor of people like my brother, in the honor of people who have died from gun violence, in the honor of people who have died from suicide, we need to pass better laws,
Representative Pearson,
and fight for a state where everybody is able to live more freely from the pain of gun violence that me and my family are experiencing. That's what you need to think about, Chairman.
I'm sorry.
All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen. Chairman Farmer, briefly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Pearson, it seems that it's very common in your party when you disagree with a comment, and I was not disrespectful to you, that you resort to yelling. Basically, everything you just told me, you just did. I have a family. I've made sacrifices every year. So
Representative Pearson, ladies and gentlemen, we are going, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Representatives, we are, I know this is a very difficult time for you to be back up here. I'm sorry for all the things that you've experienced. You've been a great uncle. You've done the things that you were supposed to do to help your family. I understand that. If I was in the same situation you were in, I would be doing the same thing. I understand that. Okay, I know tensions are high up here today.
Disrespect is high here.
But ladies and gentlemen, we're going to do our best to be as civil as we can up here, okay? And I appreciate that very much. So, with that being said, I'm going to go to Leader Lamberth. He was next on my list.
Move previous question on the bill.
Previous question has been called on the bill. We have objection. Okay. We are now voting on previous question. All those in favor of previous question, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? No. The ayes prevail. We are now voting to send House Bill 1392 on to full judiciary. Does anyone wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 2 ayes, 7 nays.
Look at this.
Do not touch him. Do not touch him. Do not touch him.
Don't you ever come out to me and my family.
Oh, shut up, boy. Don't you ever man, get up and smack your little fuzz off your head. Shut up, boy.
Come on, Justin.
As we can. Those opposed?
Take care of him, Justin. Come on. Come on, Justin.
It must have been.
Look who leaves him out of there.
Yeah, because I actually heard the audio. They must have edited out that last part, like to silence it.
Yeah, you know what? I'm from Tennessee. The woman that he's replacing has been she was a personal friend of mine for almost 50 years. Her name was Barbara Cooper, Dr. Barbara Cooper, a fine, distinguished woman who at 94 years old was going back and forth to 200 miles in one way 2 or 3 times a week to represent her district in Nashville. She's from Memphis. She slipped and fell, suffered an injury, wound up dying from a blood clot because she didn't get to the emergency room soon enough. She was deceased, but still on the ballot. She got 32,000 votes in her district. To fill the balance of her term, he got about 1,400. When he ran for election full term, he got 1,600 votes versus 32,000 for the previous incumbent. He made all of this noise about pipelines being put through North Memphis, through the hood. And then we found out that he had been getting thousands of dollars, big money, donated to his campaign in various ways from the people that were putting the pipeline through the hood, okay? Mm-hmm. A lot of people I know live in this idiot's district, and what he's talking about doing is disarming the people of Memphis in the face of Memphis having been declared to be the 10th most dangerous city in the whole world and the most dangerous by far in the United States of America, with a homicide rate completely off the charts, a kidnapping rate off the charts, a rape rate R rate off the charts, a car hijacking rate off the charts, and a chief of police that got fired from Atlanta was about to be fired from Raleigh, Durham, and then brought into Memphis that doesn't seem to know what to do with the department. Almost 900 paid for, but vacant police positions. And it is probably the largest predominantly black city or urban area in America that is under a uniform government situation. So they are messing it up. It is the only blue place in the whole state of Tennessee. The rest of it's red. And this clown is trying to void constitutional character because his brother took himself out last December. Well, I'm sorry for his grief, but that ain't my problem. I want my rights. I want my nieces to have their rights. I want my nephews to have their rights, my friends and associates to have their rights to protect themselves from rampant violent crime that is out of control, that I know is not going to be controlled by disarming honest, good citizens. So he can go to hell with that little circus display.
But why is he trying to equate the suicide of
His brother with it sounds like
violence?
Brother had family problems. It's not mine.
Right, and it wasn't even a black on black crime, and it had nothing to do with people getting illegal guns and committing crimes in the community. That it was a suicide. So
that's his business. He took himself out.
Right. So that's what. So he's doing all this huffing and puffing, getting in another representative face. Even if you weren't an elected official, that's like a co-worker. You don't do that. That's
but you saw who escorted him out, didn't you?
Women.
Did you take a look at it again? Play it again. Look who escorts him out.
Wait a minute.
Now he's supposed to be super black. Look at it.
I thought I saw a bunch of women.
Look at the one in red that is Oh, shut up.
You hear that?
Look who pulls him out.
White woman.
Look who pulls him out. The lady in red. Look who's pulling.
What are you talking about? I said the white woman.
Yeah. Now, isn't that embarrassing? He can't control himself.
That's the whole point. He cannot control his emotions. And I'm like, okay, is he's doing it for show?
He might be. He tends to do that.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is because it's not. First of all, it's not believable. Like, I'm not convinced.
Well, look what he did a year and a half ago. There was a tranny who got upset that the faculty at this private school encouraged him to mutilate himself. He wrote up a manifesto. He came back and killed 3 adults and 3 children. And the manifesto that's been leaked says he was getting revenge for them encouraging him to do this ridiculous thing of transitioning. All right. The thing is under lock, but a certain chancery court judge is trying to hold a reporter in contempt up in Nashville because somebody let him photocopy the manifesto that they were trying to keep under wraps to expose the fact that this narrative about you can trans and that's all cool. Somebody got so bent out of shape, they went on a shooting spree and killed 6 people. So what happened is, you want to talk about January 6th, he led with the other Justin, who is a guy who's half Islander, half black, from San Francisco, went to, Vanderbilt, dropped out of Vanderbilt, went to Tennessee State, And those two led this march of basically young white kids in private schools who were protesting guns. And they stormed the state legislative chamber and they went crazy up in there. And he got ejected from the state legislature. So he got returned.
The other guy.
Yeah, he got along with the other guy. They both got returned to the state legislative body, and he raised, I think it was $1.5 million inside of 30 days from all of the far left rainbow cult folk getting so worked up and enthused about him. So he's got a pretty good treasury right now, but he's always supporting rainbow cult stuff, not black stuff, not stuff for the ordinary working man, not anything about small businesses, not anything about educational reform. And he's got to deal with the fact that he hasn't done a damn thing about trying to bring pari-mutuel betting to Memphis, where it's the only city in Tennessee where it's authorized, and billions of dollars a year goes down the roadway to Tunica, Mississippi, or across the waterway to West Memphis, Arkansas. He hasn't done anything about getting that effectuated. He hasn't done anything about educational reform. He hasn't done anything about some other things in terms of code revisions. So he basically is being a loudmouth idiot trying to grandstand. I've met him, was even on a TV interview with him.
Yeah, can we move on now? I want to move on.
I mean, this is just the kind of woke idiocy that we get right now. It doesn't do anything except try to appeal to emotions. My brother died because of guns. No, your brother died because he pulled the trigger on himself. He could have knifed himself, cut his wrist, poisoned himself, jumped off of a building, driven his car into an overpass. That's his business. So the rest of us don't need to have to pay for his little personal grief. That's his business, not ours.
All right, I want to move on to tariffs. So Iran maybe having some tariffs come down on them. But April 2nd, President Trump is labeling it as Liberation Day. April 2nd is Liberation Day because where it says Trump has repeatedly called April 2nd Liberation Day with promises to roll out a set of tariffs or taxes on imports from other countries that he says will free the U.S. from the reliance on foreign goods. To do this, Trump has said he'll impose reciprocal tariffs, match the duties that other countries charge the U.S. products.
Yeah, why not? Why haven't we been doing it? They've been hitting us with heavy tariffs and we don't charge them anything. Why is that the case?
So I think the American people are concerned about, well, you know, how is what's going to go up? What prices are going to go up and affect our pockets? But I guess we want to buy a car. Well, we already know foreign cars, that's already going to be tariff tax on those off the rip. But I'm not buying no foreign car. I can't afford it.
Well, hey, they make Toyotas and Nissans down here in Mississippi, so they can set up a factory over here and employ black folk. Meanwhile, you have the Democrats stupidly in a place they do control, like Memphis, inviting South Koreans to come in here and employ 30,000 people in about 2.5 years at a large factory owned by the South Korean company. And the employees won't be local residents. They'll be imported in from South Korea. Now, see, that's what Democrats do.
So it says here, which of Trump's tariffs are about to start? Trump has said he will place 25% tariff on all imports from any country that buys oil or gas from Venezuela, which includes the U.S. itself, starting Wednesday, in addition to imposing new tariffs on the South American country. 25% tariffs on auto imports, auto imports will start being collected Thursday, with taxes on fully imported cars kicking off at midnight. The tariffs are set to expand to applicable auto parts the following week through May 3rd. The White House says it expects to raise $100 billion in revenue annually from these new duties, but economists stress this trade action will upend the auto industry's global supply chain and lead to higher prices for consumers. Now, Judge, I need to either lease or buy me a new car this year. Am I going to have to pay more money? Or or do I just need to purchase American?
Well, considering that you're a sucker if you pay the list price for the vehicle in the first place, nobody buys a vehicle for the list price unless you're a fool. It's a balance. And then the other thing is it's short term. Yeah, it might cut down some things, but it also opens up ample opportunity. You're a barber and you say, hey, all of the stuff I use in here is imported from China. You put tariffs on it, you bring my expenses up. Yeah, but you've been talking to me, Mr. Barber, about you have some ideas for tools. See, now that you create a market by giving you some slack, you can, and I'll help you with it if you want it. I'll get you some investors so you can set up the business of making these tools of your dreams that you now will have the opportunity to set up making that you did not have before. So everybody else is charging us tariffs. That's called balance of trade. It is ridiculous if you get charged a tariff and you don't charge one back, because does the price go up temporarily? Yes. But you see, when you slap a tariff on, say, South Korea for putting one on us, then South Korea says, hey, maybe we need to think about that. And I tell you what, Mr. Ambassador, if you're ready for a meeting, let's have one. How about if we reduce our tariffs on your American General Motors and Ford vehicles that come over here, and we can do a quid pro quo thing. You drop yours, we'll drop ours. And that means our market goes up because more South Koreans can afford to buy American-made cars. See, it's a balance.
So far, Trump has imposed 10% tariffs on all Chinese imports, and that began February the 4th. A levy he later doubled to 20% on March the 4th. China has hit back with retaliatory tariffs covering a range of U.S. goods, including 15% tariffs on coal and liquefied natural gas, 10% tariffs on crude oil from the U.S. But now we have Iran on the table, and I do.
Before you get off of that, you want to hear something absolutely ridiculous? You just recited what we're doing, exporting oil and petroleum products to the rest of the world. You know what's so stuck on stupid?
What?
Less than 1% of domestically consumed petroleum products are produced here in the United States.
Interesting.
Now, that's what needs to be readdressed. That kind of imbalance is just obscene because people have been making a lot of money off of it.
So it says Iran whines to the UN after Trump lays down a law. Trump made it clear, cut a nuclear deal or face bombing and tariffs. Iran's response cried to the UN about reckless and belligerent remarks. Their ambassador ranted about military adventurism and threatened swift and decisive retaliation if the US or Israel defends their own interests. Sounds like Iran's just made Trump just mad Trump won't play their rules. So it is a clip that I wanted to share with. He is talking about Iran and tariffs on Iran.
The secondary tariffs on Iran, and we'll probably give it a couple of weeks, and if we don't see any progress, we're going to put them on. We're not putting them on right now, but if you remember, I did that 6 years ago, and it worked very well, to put it mildly. And if the election weren't rigged, you would have a situation where there would be no problem with Iran today, but it was. Biden didn't know what he was doing, obviously, and we have a very rough situation in the Middle East because of that. you ended up with October 7th, and you would have never had October 7th, and you would have never had Russia going into Ukraine likewise. We're going to make a decision on secondary tariffs on Iran based on whether or not they're going to make a deal. If they're going to make a deal, then we're never going to put secondary tariffs on. We're going to hope they have a great, long, and successful life as a country. But we'll see what happens. It's very, very interesting. I can't imagine them doing anything else but making a deal. I would prefer a deal to the other alternative, which I think everybody in this plane knows what that is. And that's not going to be pretty, and I do not prefer that. So,
Mr. President,
You know, it is like when Muhammad Ali was in his prime, walking into the room and saying, all right, all you guys want to fight? Okay, I'm in this one. You want to get it there? Let's get it on. Or do we want to shake hands and be peaceful about this whole thing? See, that's what's going on. It's like you have B-52s, B-1s, B-2s. You have Ohio-class missile submarines. You have LA class, you've got Seawolf class, there's just 3 of those super subs, and you've got Virginia class subs, and you've got nuclear aircraft carriers, and you've got R.L.I. Burke destroyers. And, you know, with all of that, plus the ICBMs that Musk is upgrading for the military, that kind of says, you walk into the room and you're the government equivalent of Ali in his prime, you know, like, hey, you want to take this on? It'll be rumble in the jungle, you know, hey, Thriller in Manila, let's get it on. So it kind of, and you notice he's giving them an opportunity to say, let's negotiate and we'll back off of what we're doing. And in Iran's case, say, hey, we want you, I know you got a right to do it, but we have a right to do what we do economically. So we're leaning on you, you know, we make you feel the pain because your citizens are kind of tired of being deprived for the last 45 years. So, well, let's work something out. You know, they won't feel the pain from the lack of nukes, but you sure as hell feel the pain if we deal with the tax here.
So it says President Trump on Monday touted the success of U.S. 2-week-long offensive against Hutus in Yemen and issued a clear message: stop shooting at U.S. ships and we'll stop shooting at you. Trump administration launched its operations early this month after Hutu terrorist group once again renewed its threats against Israel vessels earlier this month after Jerusalem cut off humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip. Iran-backed Hutu terrorists have been decimated by reckless strikes over the last 2 weeks. Many of their fighters and leaders are no longer with us. We hit them every night. We hit them every day and night, harder and harder. Also, going back to Iran, Trump threatens bombing if Iran does not make nuclear deal. So U.S. President Donald Trump threatened Iran Sunday with bombing and secondary tariffs if Tehran did not come to an agreement, or Tehran did not come to an agreement with Washington over its nuclear program. In Trump's first remarks since Iran rejected direct negotiations with Washington last week, he told NBC News that U.S. and Iranian officials were talking but did not elaborate. Quote, if they don't make a deal, then we will be bombing. It will be bombing the likes of which they have never seen before. So Trump is ready to bomb Iran if they don't make a nuclear deal, and he's already going to put tariffs on them.
Well, he really needs to get ICE sicked on these illegals because I'm sure Iran has got some of their agents who are nice and comfy in various places in the U.S. with already planted military-grade explosives waiting for the word to detonate. So there might be a few problems, but he's going to have to get them out of the way. That's one of the reasons ICE, I think, is cracking down. That's the unsaid thing. What Biden seems to have done is remove the safety zone the U.S. had by the fact that it had the Atlantic Ocean to the east and the Pacific Ocean to the west to insulate it from what else was going on in the world. And now we don't have that. He's got to do something about it because it's all part of the whole holistic scheme of things. You know, they don't have B-52s, B-1s, B-2s, and F-35 strike fighters or F-A-18 Hornet strike fighters, but they've got people who have on Adidas and Nikes and just walked across the border with what they need, thanks to the last idiots, Biden, Harris. But yeah, I think he'll get a handle on it. You know, we have the Second Amendment. We are armed. We're not helpless. If we have balls and attitude, we can protect ourselves. The American public needs to be enlisted in its own defense, because I have a sneaking suspicion, thanks to Biden Harris, it's going to get real nasty in the next few couple of years. Real nasty. And they're also setting up excellent.
You think there is going to be a domestic terrorist attack on us here?
I think there's going to be an international terrorist attack because they're already here. And the public is not going to be paying much attention because you do have domestic violent activity that the far left is foolishly trying to incite and promote. Look at Davy Crockett hat, coonskin cap, coonskin weave woman, you know, with her ignorance. See, that isn't good.
Yeah.
By the way, how'd she get so much money so quickly? Getting paid what?
Well, I don't know. I haven't looked into her finances just yet, because you may be getting her mixed up with someone else. We don't know her finances.
Hers aren't exactly minuscule, and AOCs are kind of high too for somebody that just got out of their 20s and been on a public payroll for all of their adult life to be, well, 5 years worth to be worth what she filed. That's kind of strange. That doesn't seem like we have honesty there.
So, last thing, this has move away from trending politics. You ever heard of the Ark of the Covenant?
Mm-hmm.
So it says declassified CIA documents claim that the mystical Ark of the Covenant was located by a psychic decades ago in the Middle East as part of one of the intelligence agency's experimental secret projects in the 1980s. The Ark of the Covenant was thrust back into the spotlight as globe-trotting archaeologist Indiana Jones attempted to uncover the artifact in the Steven Spielberg Raiders of the Lost Ark. According to Jewish and Christian tradition, the gold-plated wooden chest housed the 2 tablets bearing the 10 commandments, which God in theology gave Moses between the 13th and 16th centuries BC. The CIA conducted experiments as part of the secret project Streak, which individuals known as remote viewers, a type of clairvoyant who claim they could project their consciousness to receive information about faraway objects. There is no credible scientific evidence that remote viewing exists, and it is generally regarded as pseudoscience. What the fuck is this? This makes no sense.
See the movie? Who he played in Descendants? He's a good actor. He played
Harrison Ford.
No, not Harrison Ford. That was
the Raiders of the Lost Ark.
No, I'm not talking about that. There was another movie. It was a joke about the CIA trying to set that up. His name will come to me in a little bit, but I saw that movie where the CIA was trying to do that. It was a comedy.
Yeah, but this is okay. So my thing is, this is an actual CIA document, Project Sun Streak.
Waste of money.
Right.
Actually, it was probably a cover for some black ops thing where they needed the money. So they made this look ridiculous as it could be. So the Soviets, during the midst of a really nasty Cold War situation, wouldn't be paying too much attention.
All right, so this is technically the last thing I want to mention. It is about Hitler. So I enjoy watching this YouTube channel. It's called Redacted. I like their show, and it comes on Monday through Friday, like around 4 p.m. They kind of go deep state, with their topics and stuff like that. But anyway, so I kind of always believed this, and I always heard this rumor that Hitler never committed suicide. He actually escaped and lived in Argentina. So this is them talking about that. And then let me just play this clip and I'll get your thoughts on it.
People know this story and who have studied the subject know that Adolf Hitler didn't kill himself in a bunker in Berlin as the Red Army closed in. I think that's, we all know that was a fabricated story, or if you watch the show, you probably understand that. Hitler actually fled Germany weeks before that using a group of underground tunnels that led to an airstrip. And that airstrip was flown. He was flown from Berlin out. It took submarines, or multiple submarines that were used, U-boats that were then sent to Argentina. In other words, Hitler lived for nearly 2 decades more in Argentina, along with vast numbers of the Third Reich. Well, now Argentinian President Javier Milei has just ordered the release of all remaining documents on all of those Nazis who fled Germany and moved to Argentina after World War II. Basically, it was almost like a second base of operations in Argentina. If you're not familiar with that, like basically the Third Reich operated out of Argentina and Germany. And many of them, including Adolf Hitler, lived in Argentina well after 1945. Most people know that Hitler lived out his days in Bariloche, Argentina, until he died there in the mid-1960s. Yes, you can read the CIA documents about this. The FBI documents also about sightings of Hitler in this area. They knew about it. Of course they knew about it. It was largely facilitated, I think it's safe to say, by the United States and its allies. Operation Paperclip, anybody? Quid pro quo?
Also, if you look into this, the skull that is held in Russia that was supposedly the remains of Adolf Hitler with a bullet wound in it is female.
Yeah.
So when you look for proof that Hitler did in fact kill himself in the bunker, you are going to find a lot of dead ends.
Yeah. And all you need to read, you can read a great book on this called The Gray Wolf. It's a great book. There's many books written about this now. But yeah, the skull, the fragments, they ran the DNA tests on it. And the Soviets allowed them to do this testing. And even Stalin openly talked about that Hitler lived. He was not there. So Stalin even knew about it. It's widely known in Argentina, by the way. Well known that Hitler sired 2 children while he lived in Argentina.
So I want to get your thoughts on that. I believe it.
Could be, maybe not. Who cares? The other thing is I find some discrepancies in the story. This information, paperclip and all of that, that's what brought us Werner von Braun, got our space program and ballistic missile defense systems online. Could be, but the point is he was suffering severely from Parkinson's disease. His prognosis was not for a long life. 20 years would have been very optimistic. The other thing is a bigger question is, supposing this was true, considering the proclivity of the CIA to promote interesting assassinations, why was he still living down in South America for 20 some years? If somebody knew where he was, that just wouldn't.
Well, in the clip, they said that, listen, it was the U.S. that helped him get out of Germany. I don't know why.
Because his Ford family.
But the U.S., Israel, the Mossad, or any other country, they have done some of the sickest things that we would never understand why. They have assisted leaders who have been ousted or defeated to flee that country or whatever deal that was made. I actually believe that he escaped, because there have been a whole lot, hundreds of former Nazi soldiers and lieutenants and officers living in Argentina. They escaped to Argentina. They were allowed refuge in Argentina and here in America.
Well, I know people from Argentina who are blonde-haired, blue-eyed, including somebody used to do work for me. Their parents were straight up from Ober Deutschland, yeah, and but they are considered Hispanics under American census.
That's all well and good. I want to focus.
But I'm saying Argentine connections to Germany, Nazi Germany, were profound.
It was because they migrated there.
Yeah, but for years after World War II, the Argentine army wore German Stahlheims, the German uniform colors, and the style of uniform, and those almost knee-high jack boots that you see them goose-stepping in. That was the Argentine army. They used Mausers from Germany, Schmeissers, and all MP-38 submachine guns, all kinds of stuff straight out of Germany. So it's possible. I mean, there was a pipeline.
Honestly, I would say this, right? I say possible because we don't have any written proof or receipts to show. But the fact is that, I wouldn't be wrong if I were to say I believe it and I think that is a fact. Why? Because you can't prove the story that have been put out there that he committed suicide. No one can prove that. Where is his body?
Did they kill Eva? Was it Eva Browns or Eva Browns? That's what Brown stands for. Brown.
Right.
Was it her?
Well, and I don't know why is it so far fetched that they allow a lot of German Nazi military officials to come here, move to Long Island, set them up with wealth. So why not Argentina? I don't know why is it so hard for people to. I know why it's hard for people to believe that, because our education system has indoctrinated children for many decades to believe that the U.S. has always been the savior of the world to make things better and to rid it of bad people, where that is not true. For anything, we have assisted behind the scenes, in front of the cameras, or in the middle of all type of evil acts. What is that with the Iran contraband?
Yeah.
The Panama Canal, which leads up to the crack era. When we look at human trafficking, it's not. Yes,
but why would the Mossad let him live?
Well, because how about when you look at what was one of the main reasons for World War II and World War I? Who financed that? Zionists.
They didn't finance Adolf.
Yeah, the hell they did.
They didn't finance Adolf.
Yes, they did. Now that no, that is a fact. That's actually documentation.
I don't think that's the
case.
I don't think that's the case. Who was number two, man?
Because they needed a reason. They needed a reason to have the state of Israel.
That isn't quite.
No, I'm just skipping through all the points in between, but I'm just saying no. Yes, and that, again, going back to what I said, it's hard for people to accept and believe that powerful Zionists, whether it's the Rockefellers or whatever, I forgot the names, but powerful Zionists funded the World War I and II. And they sacrificed.
It might have had something to do with World War II.
Let me just say this last part. Let me say this last part, because they knew there would be Jewish people murdered. So you sacrifice, in this case, the many to ensure that the few of the people of power stay in power.
Well, look, let me ask you a question. Who was the number 2 man to Hitler?
I forgot his name. I don't.
Hermann Goering. He had been a World War I fighter. He served with Baron Manfred von Richthofen, known as the Red Baron. Now, who was behind him? Who was the minister of propaganda? Joseph Goebbels,
Yes.
famously uttering the phrase that is so true now: tell a lie long enough and loud enough, and you can get anyone, including the liar, to believe it.
Yeah.
Okay. Who was the next man in charge of the secret police, the Gestapo, and the prison camps? Heinrich Himmler. That was the number 4 man. All right, we know what happened to Donitz, who was the admiral that was appointed to be Reich's minister to surrender Germany. He survived, but he spent most of the rest of his life in prison. But what happened to Goering, the Reichsmarshal, the number 2 man? You know?
Tell us.
He committed suicide while he was in custody. He had put a cyanide capsule up his anus and he consumed it. What happened to Heinrich Himmler?
So what is your point?
He committed suicide. What happened to...
So what is your point? What is the point? What's the correlation you're trying to make here?
The correlation is the second man, the third man, and the 4th man in charge killed themselves.
Allegedly.
Well, no, not allegedly. The other 2 did it in a U.S.
I mean,
custody.
even if they did, okay, so what is the point? What's
Okay,
the
the point is
correlation
it
here?
makes you think that the first one got away with not doing what his buddies did.
Because he's the leader.
Well, that doesn't have anything to do with it.
It has everything to do with it. If you played a game of chess, you have your pawns, you have your knight, you even have your queen. Sometimes you gotta sacrifice the queen to be the only one standing. So the fact is that a lot of people who are you're the top man in charge, look at our president, unless you have the powers that be that really want to assassinate you. But when it comes down to it, you know, for example, you have to make sure that the president is safe before his family, before Congress, before everything else. So in this case, you know, just because his second man and his third man, they all committed suicide because they got caught. Hitler didn't get caught.
Well, point of the exercise.
And they rather die instead of being in prison.
Point of the exercise is that at the time he purportedly escapes, because this thing that the guy was talking about months before is supposed to have occurred during the week that the Soviet Union captured Berlin, and the U.S. Air Force had absolute air control over anything. Maybe a small aircraft could get out. Yeah. Maybe there was a pipeline through Switzerland.
They said it was an underground. It was as underground.
Yeah, but it's not leading anywhere because Berlin.
It led him. It led him.
It
led him in the arms of someone that he made a deal with.
Yeah, the story goes he supposedly got to a small airstrip and he got on board a plane known as a Storch, which is something they used for artillery spotting. It's a single engine.
But this is a thing we could. One last thing I want to say on this. Well, one last thing I want to say on this. You know, if it's just a theory that he escaped to Argentina and lived out for the next 20 years, if it's just a theory and people saying that it's more factual that he committed suicide, okay, then where's the body?
A lot of them aren't found. But anyway,
why is it not found? Well, how do we know? So then how do we know he committed suicide?
What's happening is there is hell going on in Berlin at that point in time. There are artillery strikes, bombing runs, tanks are shooting it out, blowing up buildings and all kinds of things. You have Soviet troops from Siberia. You have Mongols, troops from the Soviets. I wouldn't be surprised that one of those barbarians who were fascinated by indoor toilets that flushed. They'd never seen them before. Some of the more primitive ones, they could have done the person.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing too, because
hold on. Let me make this point for you. What did they
you're not
do?
making it for me. You're just making a point.
Wait a minute. What did they do with Osama bin Laden's body after that SEAL Team 6 raid? What did they do with his body? You listening?
I'm listening. Go ahead and talk.
No question. What did they do with his body?
What did they throw his body in the sea?
And they made it disappear. Why?
They threw his body. Why?
Because they did not want a shrine for him to be played martyr to.
I'm not talking about that. Wait, slow down for a second. We saw his dead body. No one did not take a picture.
See his dead body.
No. Yes.
What did you
they
see?
Took pictures of Osama bin Laden. Again, when I said if the man committed suicide, where's the body?
Wait,
because the Russians were claiming they had it. And apparently what we just saw in the clip, they claim they had it, but that skull apparently supposed to have been Hitler's.
What happened to the Tsar's body?
Somebody either took a picture or they would have kept Hitler's body somewhere.
Okay, what happened to the Tsar's body?
Again,
what happened to the Tsar's body?
I'm not trying to debate or argue with you on
I'm not debating. I'm just asking.
Wait. This is the point that I'm making. People believe he committed suicide. But if a story comes out saying, no, he didn't, he was actually in Argentina, people can say, well, that could be a theory. Okay, let's just say that's a theory. But if the truth is this man committed suicide, who found the body? Where is
I'm
the
trying to tell you, I'm
because Russia is claiming to have it.
I'm answering they are not claiming to have the body. They're claiming to have the skull. They say they may have handled the body, but what I brought up bin Laden about, what I brought up the czars about, was they don't want a shrine for anybody to be paying homage to.
Burial site. I get
what they do is they tend to get rid of those bodies.
But you have pictures.
No, you don't have to.
You do. Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
What pictures did you see of bin Laden's body?
Any person.
What pictures?
Every person, whether it's Gaddafi, any type of leader.
Wait a minute.
I'm answering a question. Let me talk.
I'm just saying.
Any type of leader that has been murdered, let me finish. Any type of leader that has been murdered, that has been captured and killed, high profile is that. They are taking pictures, if not keeping the body somewhere as a souvenir.
Well, enlighten me. What pictures?
Not publicly with a burial.
Excuse me. What publicized, published pictures of bin Laden's body did we see?
You didn't see the pictures?
I saw some pictures, but they weren't published. They weren't published. But the point is,
those pictures have been leaked.
What pictures?
The picture of bin Laden have been leaked. What is the point that you're trying to make here?
The point I'm trying to make is this, is that when you have these kind of things, typically the bodies disappear because they don't want a shrine made out of them.
I'm not talking about I don't give a shit. I'm not talking about a fucking shrine.
What do you think they would have done with Adolf Hitler? Do you think
there are a lot of dead people that don't have a shrine? They don't have a burial.
You are avoiding.
But the body is
you're avoiding the obvious.
I'm talking about. Listen, if you believe, I put it like this:
I don't believe anything.
You believe he committed suicide? Fine. I don't believe he did, and it's nothing that you or anybody else can tell me otherwise.
The point is that it would be problematical him getting out of Berlin at that point in time. Oh, but if he did, but if he did, the likelihood of Mossad not tracking him down and killing him, and the question you asked. Wait a minute.
Mossad exist.
One step at a time. Yes, it later did. He lived
later, not
if he lived for 20 more years. That is into the 1960s, 1965, when the NAM was going on. That was when I was a young adult. Okay.
Why would the Mossad come in and kill him?
Because why did they kill all the rest of them?
What would be their reason?
Retaliation.
Of what?
For doing what happened in World War II.
The Zionists didn't care about those Jews.
Yes, they did.
Did not.
What do you think the Mossad did with all of those people they assassinated?
They financed it. What are you talking about?
What in the world are you talking about?
Okay, it's time to end the show, honey. Because you really
seriously.
Let me
is it your contention?
Hold on.
Is your contention?
Do you really think?
Hitler in World
Do you
War II?
really think that a government, whether it's here or anywhere else, have never used its own people as collateral?
There wasn't any Israel during World War II. That was after.
Jews. They were Jewish. They were Jewish.
Yeah, there were Jews all over the world. A small percentage.
Who financed World War II?
They financed their own extermination. That's why.
They financed for those Jews to be exterminated. See, Jewish people, they're not all the same. There are Jewish people that are not Zionists, and then you have Zionists.
I'm not adopting that.
You don't have to, but that is a fact.
But all I did was answer why there's no body. They tend to make bodies disappear, just like they did with the czars and his family, so there would not have any shrine to which people could come and pay homage to the martyrs. That's what you do. Okay, you hide it.
Even if they destroyed a body, they took snapshots or something. They always
doubtful. Anyway, next thing, assuming he survived, considering the pogrom that the Mossad entities carried out to
prime example of a government that uses its constituents, its people as collateral. 9/11. So again, for me to sit up here and think that my government, would never sacrifice my life for their greater need, I would be insane to believe that.
Been there, seen that, done that. But anyway, it's done under certain circumstances. Whose interest would Mossad be protecting by not targeting him for execution?
What would be the reason to target him?
Well, if he lived for 20 years after World War II, that would
he wasn't living freely, like just
anywhere. But they found all these other people, lowly operatives.
So why did Mossad? Here's another question: why didn't the Mossad kill the former Nazi generals that were allowed to come to America and live here?
They weren't.
Yes, they were.
They weren't accused of war crimes. They were.
They were generals.
That's not necessarily
Nazi generals.
That doesn't mean you were accused.
Listen.
That doesn't mean
no. The same reason why America allowed Nazi officials, army officials, to come here and live.
That's because
the same reason why they allowed, for whatever the reason may have been, Hitler to go to Argentina and live out for days, 20 years.
Operation Paperclip was to enlist the German scientists in the American military effort that was being prompted by the Soviet Union in what became the Cold War for 40 years. So anyway, it's not surprising. But I mean, the point I'm making is that Mossad was very effective. So the question becomes...
Well, Mossad didn't exist then.
Yes, it did.
When Mossad came into existence, okay, let's go back and find Hitler, kill him. He was already dead. He had died when Mossad
killed off some people a bit earlier on. Remember, he would have lived to 1965. They were killing people before that. Read Menachem Begin's autobiography. He was an assassin on behalf of the Israeli government. He'd been trained as a commando by the Brits. And he freely acknowledges the people he assassinated, the mosque, the church, synagogues, and the schools he blew up with men, women, and children in occupancy. Read it sometimes. The autobiography of Menachem Begin, former prime minister of Israel and the person that came up with the peace treaty under the Carter administration with Anwar Sadat, who was president of Egypt. Now, all I'm saying is it's possible, but highly unlikely.
To you.
Yeah, to me, for a number of reasons.
All right. Well, we don't need to explain no reason. I'm tired.
I'm not. It's just that when you are in a country.
We went on for 3 hours. Oh, no, honey. We got to end the show. Say good night. 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 Say I'm tired.
I will. But last point, when you are operating to apprehend somebody in a country or series of countries that don't have our Bill of Rights, due process of law, and restraints on what law enforcement can do, it's not as hard catching somebody over there as it is here. So just keep that in mind. I mean, it might have happened, but
no, I of course, yes, I will agree. But with that said, they weren't looking for him like that.
Oh, they looked for.
But again, so your theory is no, he really did commit suicide. Mine,
now, he may not have committed suicide.
Mine
but he
is
was dead pretty soon after.
He escaped to Argentina.
You know what? One of the theories.
No, I'm ready to go.
Oh, no, hold on.
I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go.
One last theory to explain it. And it's not that he committed suicide. It's not that he escaped. There were quite a number of German general officers and other operatives who very much wanted Adolf dead because they thought he was a disaster. Remember Falkenberg and what happened with his, what was it? They did a movie about that.
Just say good night, 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 everybody.